Keane, their team is like, in some ways you look at it and it's mad, but I think it actually points to the exact problem, the systemic problem that Matt's talking about, because they've got a load of old guys and a load of young guys and kind of nothing in between. I was just looking at this earlier, right? If you take, right, there's 6 of the team and a further 3 on the bench, so 9 out of the 23 are 32 or older. So that's Halfpenny 34, Dan Bigger 33, Ken Owens 36, Alan Wynne Jones 37, Tipperick 33, Falatau 32, and then on the bench you've got Baldwin 34, Rhys Webb back from like the dead, I don't know, where's he been, 34, Alex Cupper 32. Like, George North is in there as a very old 30-year-old, I would say, as well, who's been around an awful long time. That's so that's 9 out of the 23. What I would consider like 25 to 30-year-olds, maybe the traditional prime, they've got 6 of them in their 23. If you were looking at what Ireland will have in their likely 23, and this could give or take a few, given we haven't picked the team yet, you're probably looking at 13 of between 25 and 30-year-olds. It's like they've missed the generation. You've got kind of like Tomas Williams, Josh Adams, George North, Gareth Thomas and Francis, Dylan Lewis on the bench. They're the only guys that are in that sort of... And other than North and Josh Adams, really, are any of those guys, world beaters? Whereas with Ireland, it's their best players outside of Sexton are at that age. They've missed the generation completely.
Yeah, if this team was picked 6 or 7 years ago, barring a couple of the younger guys that he has picked, you wouldn't have been surprised at all. So, look, I think Gatland is probably he is in a tricky position in that, he's under enormous pressure to turn this around by the time the World Cup comes around. And I think, Ireland and Wales are going into the Six Nations with their very different aspirations. I don't think Wales, I would probably be honest enough to say that, winning the title is probably not on their to-do list. It's about peaking at the World Cup. Now, obviously Ireland would love to do that too, but Gatland's I think his back is against the wall a little bit, and what choices you have, like you said, they have missed a generation of players. It's not like he's left out a load of guys who are coming in, banging down the door, but even still, guys like Lee Halfpenny and you mentioned George North, they're still persistent with playing him at outside centre, which I've never really thought that was his best position. So he'd probably argue that over the last couple of years that the development hasn't been made, but it's just such a Gatland type team. You know what you're going to get with it. It's going to be set piece heavy, but for all the, if you'd want to say, flaws, because I like to remember these guys are kind of at the opposite end of their career to where they'd like to be, but they've got a lot of experience, and guys like Falatau and Tipperick are still very, very capable.
They're not over the hill. They're not over the hill, a certain age,
and they're very capable. Exactly. And they're bringing a guy like Jack Morgan into the back row, who they rate very highly in Wales. He's been outstanding in the URC this season. So he is trying to sprinkle a couple of the talent in. You've got Joe Hawkins playing in the centre and Rio Dyer on the wing. But I think the flip side of that is that having Johnny Sexton at 10, particularly with those two backs, there's no one better at picking out weakness in an opposition team, and I would imagine that those two in particular, Rio Dyer on the left wing and Joe Hawkins at 12, Ireland's attack is so sophisticated at the moment that they're so good at picking out weak points, and I'd imagine that they'll go straight after them. And it was interesting, Gatland was supposed to be naming his team tomorrow on Thursday, but he named it on Tuesday, and I'd say that was probably a two-pronged approach. Matt kind of touched on what a dire week it's been for Welsh rugby off the pitch, and I'd say the Welsh Rugby Union were delighted that Gatland decided to go early, because at least now we're talking about the Welsh team 2 days early rather than the kind of the off-field stuff. And we shouldn't gloss over the off-field stuff as well. It's really, really damaging to the sport, but it also lays down a marker. South Africa tend to do this as well. They name their team really early, and it's a bit like, well, here's our hand, what have you got? So it's interesting. Warren Gatland was sort of edging towards the mind games, I would say, yesterday in his press conference, saying about all the pressures on Ireland, that they're number 1 ranked team in the world. But I think this was the same at the launch kind of last week over in London, the Six Nations launch. I think he's wary of I don't think any grenades are going to really work on Andy Farrell. He knows him so well, and even if he did, I just don't think Andy Farrell is the type of coach to bite. Now, it was always enjoyable from a media point of view, because I always thought Gatland got under Joe Schmidt's skin quite a bit, whether it was playing mind games about the roof, will it be open or will it be closed, all the things that Joe Schmidt used to really fret about. But Andy Farrell is much more, I'd say, relaxed. He's confident in where his team is, but I still think this Wales team, Matt's right, it's not a good time to get them first up in Cardiff.
Yeah, they'll run out of steam, but that doesn't mean that this team can't get there.
And we talked about kind of, again, from an Irish point of view, playing Wales first up, I would say that's no gimme in terms of victory. And then you're playing France next week, and all of a sudden you know, Ireland's year could look very different after the first 2 weeks of the Six Nations. It really could, though. Like, it's Matt's right. Like Matt mentioned at the start of the conversation, the margins between the top teams in rugby at the moment are so fine. That's why I just don't think anyone, particularly from an Irish point of view, is reading too much into the fact that Ireland are the number one ranked team in the world. France are still the team to beat in the Six Nations. They're going to be the favourites for a home World Cup. So yeah, like it tees it up really nicely. But there are still weaknesses, I think, in this Wales team that Ireland will I think that they'll have joy in exploiting that.
Joe Hawkins was Tom Shanklin was on OTB AM this morning, and he was talking about Joe Hawkins being picked at 12, Matt, as a more of a ball playing 12, and it shows that maybe Warren ball might be a thing of the past and we might be looking to go wide. I just wonder how that correlates to going back to Lee Halfpenny at full back. Like, can those two things exist at the same time?
Yeah, I just can't see Gaddy, with the short period of time he's had with the team, changing away from what was a ball. You know, I just can't see, even if he wants to, and he's probably learned a whole lot of lessons from that line. Still, Warren's a very intelligent dude. He's poorly portrayed in Ireland. He's a very nice guy. He's a very funny dude at press conferences. He's got a wicked sense of humour, but he's a gentleman. Right, but apart from that, he's also smart. So he's learned from that Lions tour. But he knows, okay, what can I do? Can I bring in a radical change, or with my old Warriors, can we go back to what we did with maybe some changes, but stick around to what we have, what we know we can do, and what we know Ireland don't like. Now, what has changed from the Irish point of view? Ireland's defence is superb. It's just, you saw it against New Zealand, saw it against South Africa, and we saw it against Australia, where they forced Australia back. Australia in the Irish 22 there, beginning of the second half for a considerable period of time, and Ireland actually made them retreat up the field. But I don't think that Gaddy has the time or the resources to really change the way Wales are playing outrageously. So I think we'll get what we'll get. But if Wales do it well enough, and they certainly know how to do it, they've got about 10 years practice at it, they'll still cause some problems. But I can't see them being, this wonderfully expansive, flowing team. I think they're going to be quite abrasive and quite atrocious. And, if he gets a knighthood, it'll be the services to insomnia, because it's a boring way of playing.
But that's the point. I think the jury is still out if he has learned from that Lions tour, because he went back to New Zealand with the Chiefs and it was an utter disaster. So he's coming back in and, he's picking the same kind of guys, and you look at the coaching staff that he's got in. He wanted Rob Howley to come back as the attack coach, and people have really short memories. I mean, when Gatland was appointed, a lot of the Welsh public were hailing as, like Matt said, the Messiah is back. But a lot of Welsh people were fed up of Warren Ball over the years, and all of a sudden people seem to have forgotten about that. They've forgotten about how bad that Lions tour was. So I would say the jury is still very much out. And can you teach an old dog new tricks? I mean, Warren Gatland is well down the road in terms of his career. So I think it'll be interesting to see if he has, because I think the game has moved on from that type of game.
And that was just a snippet of our full Six Nations preview with Cian, Tracey and Matt Williams. You can listen to the whole thing by going to our podcast, Rugby on Off the Ball, wherever you get your podcasts. Search for it there and you'll be able to listen to the full, almost an hour, Arthur tells me, while he was giving out to me for going on too long. You can listen to the whole thing there. Or if you want to stay on YouTube, there's another clip right here.